Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of Construction Over Coffee. I'm your host, Jeff Raymond. I have Nicholas Powell, the co-founder at prosrent.com out of Dallas, Texas with me today. Nick, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to connect with you guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's open up the podcast. Let's talk a little bit about what exactly it is you do, because you're in a very interesting space that I just don't see a lot of folks in.
Sure. In my prior experience of being a subcontractor and kind of working with different general contractors over the last few years, we started realizing that there was a lot of tech missing in the construction industry. And when I say tech, I don't really mean, the ability to, operate your phone or get on a computer really quick. To me, it means having the ability to monetize data and make informed purchasing decisions or buying decisions for your organization that either help increase your bottom line or give you an idea of, hey, what direction do we take in the future to either correct some mistakes we've made or to better our position, a year to 2 years from now.
Mhm.
So when I think of tech and construction, I think of data, and there's not a lot of real good data out there for general contractors and subcontractors to rely on to make informed decisions to better their companies for the future.
Agreed. Now, one interesting thing about what it is that you do, again, besides there just not being a lot of folks doing it, is you work across, it seems like, multiple different rentals. I've noticed aerial work, earth moving, site needs, compaction, pavement, material handling. You guys really cover a lot. So tell us a little bit about that and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so normal process as a subcontractor or GC, on a major project, you're going to have probably 10 to 20 different classes of equipment coming in. And what I mean by classes of equipment is just kind of like you said, aerial, material handling, big cranes, steel erectors that have 180-foot boom lifts. What we found a problem is that there was no single source of information to actually procure and manage all of this equipment. So whether it was the 100,000-pound excavator that cost $50,000 a month to rent, or it was the $84 porta potty that doesn't really cost that much, we wanted to give our end users the opportunity to manage and source all that equipment in one place.
It seems like that process, and in talking with individuals in the industry, that process is typically so fragmented, and you're dealing with multiple vendors, suppliers, partners, whatever you want to refer them to. It's hard to get a handle on all that between the paperwork, the invoicing and accounting, hopping on the phone with this person and that person. Mm-hmm. I just don't see any other equipment rental platforms out there. So tell us a little bit about exactly what you do, the specifics and the nitty gritty of it.
Sure. So let's just envision myself as an end user for ProsRent who rents equipment often. I'm able to go online. I'm able to search for the exact asset that I want, whether it be a 19-foot scissor lift or a boom lift. I'm able to input the dates or the duration I need, and then I can actually search and Google validate an address. Now, once I actually populate that to my cart and check out, I'm able to manage the order from start to finish. So I'm able to track it from pre-delivery to on rent. I can do all my change requests through the system. So if I need to do a service call with the vendor, or if I need to transfer the equipment to another project, I'm able to accomplish that all through the web application. And then downstream, we're also able to help them identify invoicing, billing, and payment, and actually they can pay through our process as well. So it's more of a turnkey solution rather than just being able to source and identify equipment and manage the equipment.
So you're the one-stop shop for the equipment rental.
Yep, one-stop shop. And then the way we work in the back end is we have a huge network of vendors that really love working with us. And we essentially just maintain our accounts with all those different vendors. And then as we get a order in a market area that one of our preferred vendors is in, they get first right of refusal at that order. And if they can't accept it because they don't have the inventory, or maybe their dispatch is full and they can't get it out at the time requested, then it'll actually round robin to the next vendor in our market area that might be able to help out with that deal.
Okay. So some of the benefits people might realize from your platform is they're dealing with one person instead of 15 or 20. You're a one-stop shop. They can source, find equipment, troubleshoot, get service, handle billing, everything directly through you. And I guess if there's ever an issue, they know exactly who to call.
Yep. Yep. We're
Okay.
the one foot to the fire to hold, if you will. And that's why our customers love us. They're able to do everything on their mobile device on site. You know, a lot of project managers and construction managers aren't really sitting at their office at a desk all day. They're out site managing their team, making sure that they're doing everything they need to do. And they can hop on their phone, type in prosrent.com, see all the orders that are active on that site. They can actually call off and do everything right from their mobile device. So we've tried to make sure that our technology was conducive to the manner in which the project managers and construction managers are working out in the field. One thing that we didn't realize coming into it is how much how much buy-in and how much decision making comes down to the billing and finance departments of some of these companies. So, you know, our sales team will bring on a superintendent or a project manager, and they're like, holy crap, this is freaking awesome. I can get everything in one spot. You know, I don't have to deal with, you know, Joe, Jim, and Bob from 3 different vendors. It's just ProsRent.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we get in front of the procurement team and they're just blown away. It seems that this technology doesn't exist with 80% of vendors out there. So if you identify a smaller market supplier in Dallas who might have a better deal, there's probably a 99.9% chance that they have no technology to help you either call off equipment or manage it through your mobile device, or even go online to view active orders or invoices. Everything is still snail mail and still very analog.
It's funny you say that. One thing we see a lot on the show is just how out of date and out of touch the construction industry is as a whole. One guest joked that the 2 last industries to always change are farming and construction. And I thought about that. I said, you're right. A lot of companies, like you said, they're dealing with snail mail, paper checks, calling in, filling out a purchase order form,
Yep.
sending it and waiting. And, you know, things are moving so quickly right now.
Mm-hmm.
Things are moving at, I think, the speed of thought in some cases, where you no longer have to wait for a contract to come, review it and sign it. You can do it via DocuSign. You don't have to wait for the estimate to come through and review it. You can send that electronically, and you have software to manage that. So
Yep.
to have equipment rental that catches up with the times, that's pretty exciting.
Yep.
Now, you guys are local only to Dallas or nationwide?
So we're nationwide. We actually have rentals out in Canada and Puerto Rico as well. And we plan hopefully on going international someday. We have a development shop in India, and they're very active in construction over there. And we think that that could be a viable market for us in the future as well. It's funny you mentioned, you know, change and adapting and overcoming. Construction industry and farming is probably one of the biggest pain points of adopting new technology, if you will. But they're getting better. One of my mentors, Dave Sharney, taught me this really awesome exercise to kind of get people out of the mindset of change, right? And he said, you know, out of everyone in the room right now, who's wearing a watch? And, you know, a lot of people raise their, oh, you know, I have a watch on, you know, whether it's a smart watch or traditional watch, what hand do you wear it on? The left hand, or I wear it on my right hand. Now, the exercise is taking your watch off and trying to put it on your other wrist, right? And a lot of people have issues doing this. And a lot of people don't understand why it's so much more difficult to put your watch on the hand that's not your dominant hand. And it has nothing to do with change. It has everything to do with your mind. Your mind is the main controller of not wanting to adapt and overcome. This is an exercise I do with some project managers and construction managers as well, to show them, hey, it might be a little bit tough to get used to, but you will get used to it and you will be more efficient because of it.
Agreed. I think mindset is really everything. You know, in talking to owners, reps, GCs, subs, and the people leading those companies, it's really slow to change compared to an industry like tech, for example, for a couple of reasons. One is it's, you know, typically the way that it's been done has worked for so long. Construction is such a unique industry in the fact that, you know, do you typically have 1 or 2, maybe 3 owners of a company max? And a lot of construction companies, family owned, they've been doing things for what seems like forever in a certain way, and it worked. And then you take a company like you know, you have a tech company where there may be multiple owners or co-founders. There may be, you know, outside money that has kind of done this before and they know what to do and they have a playbook that folks can follow. But I think for the longest time, it was just expected that, firms in our industry, they just do what they do and they'll catch up when they catch up. One positive I think that did come out of COVID is firms were really forced to adapt or get left behind. If you're still doing contracts on pen and paper, what are you doing? It's 2021. We have one individual on the show who was talking about technology he used in the residential market where he has a drone that literally can fly around the property, do measurements, spit those measurements out, and it tell you exactly what you need.
Yep.
I shook my head and said, wow, okay. That's, that just think of the time and the cost savings and the implications around that. So,
oh yeah, well, you apply the same concept to roofing. Fly a drone over a residential area, detect all the roofs that are damaged, and now you have business for the next 2 years to go in and repair. Same thing for asphalt and concrete. I've seen some of these major concrete and asphalt companies that you would never expect to adopt drone technology. Now they're flying drones over municipalities, and they're giving reports back to the city saying, hey, if you guys don't correct this in the next 2 months, it's going to cost you, X amount down line because you're going to have to repair it in such a major way. So it's very interesting to see the shift, and it's really cool being a part of the shift essentially, because it wasn't like this 4 or 5 years ago. It was, no one knew what a drone was in construction. No one could care. Procore and some of those other companies that were out were still, getting off the ground and building up. So it's a really interesting transition, to say the least.
It is. One thing we talk about a lot on the show is the trades, the skills gap in the AEC, the architecture, engineering, construction industries. And one thing that really gets brought up a lot, and you and I have talked about before, is that construction is just not seen as a sexy industry. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons behind that is because it is so slow to adapt, especially with younger folks coming out of high school and college that grew up from what it seems like a smartphone on their hand 24/7. They're used to being around technology. They're used to being ingrained in a particular technical ecosystem. So if you have an industry that is really adverse to that, where you're encouraged to do things old school, the old way, I can totally see why that may scare off an entire generation of folks who know tech and love tech and want to do that. But, construction definitely isn't seen as a sexy industry, and curious to hear your thoughts around that and why that's the case and what we might be able to do to change that.
Well, one, I think a lot of images when I think of construction is the good old boy that's a little bit overweight who might have the plumber's crack and some of these different personas. So getting that perception out is really going to be key and critical. I've met a lot of different construction company owners now that are upper 20s to lower 30s that are either taking over a generational family business, and now they're actually actively taking part in what I would describe as what an integration officer would do. So they're taking these companies over from their grandparents or their fathers, and they're going in and they're saying, what technology can I implement so I don't have to hire 500 people down the line, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the main issue too, is these construction companies, while they've been around for so long and they have set processes, it takes them hiring and hiring and hiring to maintain these processes that aren't very efficient. And making sure that you plan 5 years ahead and you say, okay, if we can't do it now, at least we can create a structured plan to make sure it happens, is just not happening right now. So, when I interview new candidates or interns or people that are coming on board, you're not coming on board to rent out equipment. You're not coming on board to manage projects. You're coming on board to disrupt an industry and do things better and make not only general contractors and subcontractors' lives easier, but the whole industry surrounding. So vendors, materials providers, logistics guys, we're solving a lot of problems for all these individuals. And that's really what younger generation needs right now. Millennials and is it Gen Xers? Am I off?
Xers, Zs, Ys. I mean, there's so many different generations, right? Here. Feeling old.
They feed off of feeling like they're making a difference. And a lot of construction company owners do a bad job at building that culture up and maintaining that culture. One company
Absolutely.
that we work very closely with is PaveCon, and they're $200 million a year, and
Mhm.
even some of their lowest level employees get to share in a profit share model on each project that they're on, which is almost unheard of in the construction industry.
Yeah.
So the sooner that owners like myself and leaders start vesting their employees and start understanding that their team members want to make a difference, they don't just want to come to work and get a paycheck 9 to 5. I think that's when we start seeing it switch, and you start seeing a lot more people want to come in and join construction companies and change it for the better, and not be mandated to these old processes that seem inefficient, and because of an age gap they can't get their leaders to clearly understand, hey, this isn't the way to do things. We need to adjust and do it better, because it might mean the difference between hiring 20 people or just hiring 2 people the next 2 years.
Agreed. You brought up a really good point. I think something that's really appealing to folks about industries like tech, accounting, finance, et cetera, they're stable, they offer good money, they're tech savvy, but a lot of those have clear and defined paths to rapid advancement, to equity, and to ownership. It's not uncommon if you join a startup, depending on your title, years of experience, and the nature of work that you do, to have some type of equity in the company, especially if they're, seed, series A or before. It's just not uncommon for that to be the
Mhm.
case. And in the A&F, the accounting finance world, oftentimes, depending on the company you go with, there's a clear path to advancement and a partner into ownership. But in construction, it seems like that that path always is a little blurred. With a lot of
Yep.
companies, it's like the only way to even get there is if someone retires or dies, and
Yep.
that's it. Or if you're, friends with the owner, if you're family, things like that.
Very
Um,
political. Yep.
it's very political, and that's a turnoff for a lot of people. Some people want to stay estimators or PMs or supers their entire life. Some people want to move from the field to the office. Some people want to move from the office to the field. But a
Mhm.
lot of people, in their careers, I think very few people go into this saying, hey, I want to be a project engineer for my whole life, maybe a PM. Just not the case.
Yeah.
They want to move into ownership, they want to move into equity, and the industry as a whole does not do a good job of offering that to people. I think the closest you get is what some of the larger companies, the Skanskas, the Walshes, the JE Dunns, they have different tiers of
Mhm.
PM 1, 2, 3, APM, whatever, senior PM. And then you can move in ops. But I think the industry as a whole needs to do a better job of looking internally, figuring out, how do we reward our employees? How do we give them ownership, not only of projects, but of the company? And how do we offer them a clear path, again, not only to something they can buy into, but something they can believe in as well?
Yep.
There needs to be I think, a deeper cause.
Yeah.
Um,
I say it all the time. My goal as a leader and a CEO currently is to build my team up to the point where I'm not useful to them anymore. Right?
mhm.
Because if I can surround myself with a team that's so powerful that essentially I send myself out of a job in 2 years, that means I've done a really spectacular job and that my organization is probably very successful.
Yes. I heard one of my mentors say the job of a CEO is to push himself out of the company as quick as possible, or something
Yep.
similar like that. Um, I think something else, again, we've talked about with the issue with the skills gap, in addition to what we mentioned, is that kids growing up, they hear the same thing. And we talk about this on the podcast a lot. Kids here go to college, get a real job, real being, what your parents or your parents' parents or friends did, which is usually going to medicine, going to legal,
Selling
going to
houses.
tech, go do taxes, right? Very rarely do they hear the words, hey, Johnny, you need to go into construction because it's a great career that pays great, awesome work-life balance and stability, and it's very rewarding. Now, that can be the case, that can be true, but it is simply just not said. And I think, that trend probably really started 40, 50 years ago. And you've seen nearly every year, with the exception of 2008, you've just seen the amount of jobs in the AEC industries continue to creep up, and the number of people in those fields are just not keeping up. So we need to ask ourselves some serious questions. How do we fix that? One option is getting in front of people at a younger age, letting them know about it. And there's organizations, like Build Your Future, that do that. Another is, getting kids involved in trade schools. And again, I want to say there's nothing wrong with college. For
Yep.
some people, it makes sense, but mandating that as the first and only policy, I think, is more damaging. Some kids want to grow up and they want to, they want to bang nails into wood. Some kids want to grow up, they want to be plumbers. Others say, I want to go build stuff. I want to review plans. I want to estimate. And they don't even know how to go about it because it's never been brought to their attention or given to them as an option. So I'm curious, what do you see as other issues, and how do you propose navigating around that with the next generation?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think a lot of it comes from parenting. So just like you said, if your parents weren't tradesmen, or they didn't, fix all the light fixtures in their house, and they didn't fix all their own cars and all this other stuff, then there's a good chance that, the younger generation is probably not going to want to go into the trade. I actually got a chance to attend Ellis Tech. I'm not sure if you've heard of Ellis Tech, but they're up near you in Dayville, Connecticut, for 2 years. Really loved cars when I was younger. Still love cars. Huge classic car guy. So I went to tech school for 2 years. I got to do 6 days in, a regular high school setting, and then it would be 6 days in tech and learning how to fix cars and learning how to manage an auto shop. So really, it's going to start at the education from the parents level. Me personally, I wouldn't want my daughter wanting to go to college, just because I think college teaches you how to stay within the lines. And, as humans, we're a lot more, we latch on a lot more to things that are outside the line, right? Which is like, breaking laws or doing some stuff that's not necessarily, that's a huge example, but we don't generally like just following the same path, right? Humans are very, very different, each and every one of them. So I personally think that instead of the United States focusing on, what's the word, subsidizing all these, college level places like Harvard and Yale and all these different colleges that are getting millions and millions of taxpayer dollars a year, they should be focused more on funding some of these trade schools. And, even when I was at trade school, it was, the automotive was awesome, but carpenters, they didn't learn how to build a house at trade school. They didn't let the guys go out there with a subcontractor company and actually learn on site exactly the things to do. So, some of those other tier trades that, they're pumping out, in my opinion, they could probably do a lot better on the program and get a lot more involved with making sure that, these young kids are getting out on site and actually understanding and experiencing it, rather than just in a little, workshop behind closed doors. Because the construction industry is a lot bigger than just a 1-story or a 2-story house, right? You could be building 180-story skyscrapers someday if that's really what you do. Or, you could be propelled in the air, working on a telephone line and doing different things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for a lot of different personalities, whether you like, the adrenaline junkie, or you want to go into accounting and finance. The construction industry offers a ton, and they missed a lot of that in trade school. They didn't teach you how to bid effectively or anything like that. If I had known what I know now about construction, I probably would have started my own construction company right out of high school. I would have, I built my credit up for a little while, get out in the economy, go get a loan for $250,000, and then did it myself. Because ownership and being able to manage and direct correctly is key in the construction industry.
You hit on some really good points. It's interesting, I guess, politics aside, it's interesting that, the government and lenders are so willing to give to 18-year-olds that may or may have a clue about what they want to do. And they're willing to give them $100, $200, $300,000 to go to school. But what about $20,000, $30,000 a year for living expenses while they do a paid or an unpaid apprenticeship program, and they support them in that? And, most apprenticeships are paid, but you see my point. I think a lot of it starts at home, but I think a lot of it starts with the policies that we just have in place um, at an educational level. You know, there's tons of free money and grants out there if you want to go the college route, but there's really not a lot if you want to get involved in the trades.
Yep.
Um, you know, one other thing that we hear a lot is I think people forget the impact psychologically that 2008 had on a lot of folks in the trades. A lot of folks that left the industry because work dried up, there were a ton. And I don't think, and I
Mhm.
think a lot of them didn't come back. They repurposed their careers. They went into, you know, different industries. And that takes a long time to recover from that if you do want to get back. Interesting enough, what we're seeing is kind of an opposite effect now where construction is a bright spot in the economy, and you're seeing folks that are leaving careers to come work in construction. They're leaving, you know,
Mhm.
hospitality, um, they're leaving customer service. You know, some of them are even leaving their office jobs to get into
Mhm.
construction because they're seeing that, you know, yeah, 2008 sucked, but it's durable, it's stable, and people who, you know, have been in an office for 10 years, they want to get outside, maybe they want to build stuff. So it's interesting to see to compare 2008 versus 2020, you
Yeah.
know, two recessions, but two vastly different outcomes for our industry.
I completely agree with that. And as terrible as COVID was, it may have given a reality check to a lot of people who thought some of these industries were completely moated and defensible from black swan events, which they're not. I mean,
Yep.
we saw millions of small businesses fold, whether it was restaurants, construction companies, tech companies. It didn't matter who you were. So,
Yeah. One thing we saw that we've talked about too is, for the most part, a lot of that in the US was geographically based. In the construction industry, if you're up in the Northeast, unless you were in healthcare, critical facilities, data centers, building manufacturing facilities, or, you know, you're building facilities that were central to the supply chain, it was really tough to, I think, get by. And a lot of that had to do with what people thought was safe versus unsafe with environments. And then you look at places in the South and the Midwest where it didn't matter what you did in construction. For the most part, you were pretty good, you know.
mhm.
Um, didn't matter if you were in multifamily, residential, or even commercial. If you were in Florida, Texas, Georgia, et cetera, you did really well for yourself. What we've seen to be really interesting is, you know, there's definitely a population shift undergoing where people are leaving some states and going to others. I'm sure you're seeing it in Texas, where I think the latest stats I read was for every one person that leaves your state, 4 to 6 more arrive.
Yep.
Um, and what that means is people need stuff built. They need homes,
Mhm.
they need places of worship, they need grocery stores, they need healthcare facilities. When you have a massive influx of population, you just need more infrastructure and more buildings. So, as somebody who's kind of living in Texas, you know, feet on the ground, what are you seeing?
It's absolutely insane. I
Yeah.
joke sometimes we go to visit, Connecticut, and they've been building the same gas station for 5 years up in Connecticut. And the 4 days I'm in Connecticut, when I come back to Texas, there's a whole new subdivision, and there's a whole hotel that's been stood up, and so it's absolutely insane. And to see the influx of companies that have been headquartered in California, like Oracle, for almost 120 years, just jump ship and move to Texas is in my opinion amazing. I mean, it's a testament to some of the different policies and some of the different leaders that we've had here in Texas to ensure that not only we survive black swan events, but afterwards we're still very attractive for migrants coming
Driving.
to the states. So it's I don't like the traffic as much, I'll be honest.
Mhm.
But I'm in the industry that's honestly getting a lot of the upside from this. So it's been crazy. One thing that I will say that I've noticed is, when manufacturing came to a standstill, and some of these different warehouses had to limit the amount of employees they had for a year, it has really hurt the supply chain. And what I mean by that is not really getting rental equipment and stuff, it's getting materials. Like I have some of our clients right now are they're not able to start jobs because they can't get concrete or they can't get lumber or they can't get steel. And if they can get it, they're paying, 8 to 10 times what they were paying 2 years ago.
Yep.
So that's got me a little bit concerned. I always knew inflation was going to be a necessary evil of everything that happened in the last 2 years. I'm hoping that it doesn't come back with such an ugly face that, it starts putting some of these guys in a really bad position.
Yeah. Inflation can get ugly. I think I was reading something that almost half the dollars, between 50 and 60% of all dollars in existence have been printed in the last several years, which is kind of crazy to believe. And if you
I
don't
could
think
have went another.
inflation is coming, you're crazy.
I could have went another 10 years without hearing that stat, man. Thanks for
Same.
giving me a little reality check.
Same. You know, a lot of people in the media love focusing on lumber. Lumber was the big ticket increase, but we see everything from lumber to metals to concrete, as you mentioned. One guest that was on the show talked about steel rebar going nuts, with them being more in the
Copper's
concrete.
insane right now.
Yeah. And, there definitely is a materials shortage right now. People unfortunately think, well, everyone for the most part is heading back to work. How can that be the case? But they don't realize that we burned through all the supply we had for the last couple of months, the last 6 to 12 months. We just burned through supply that we had in stock. We burned through inventory, and the supply chain is really starting to play catch up. A lot of the reports that we're seeing and a lot of what we're kind of viewing on the ground is around Q3, Q4, things should start to stabilize a little bit. So, anytime I'd say around Q3, Q4, that would be July, August, September, coming up shortly, you'll see things start to stabilize. And by stabilize, that doesn't mean the prices drop 40%. That just means they stop going up 10, 20, 30%.
Yeah.
And they kind of level out. Maybe you'll see a pullback, but so the whole supply chain is playing catch up. Go try to buy a new car, try to buy a new refrigerator. Good luck trying to get a couch from Lazy Boy. I've been trying to, they're like 4 to 8 months.
I hate to get off topic, man, but I finally just got my ottoman on our couch set almost a year and a half later. It took them almost a year to deliver our couch. So if those guys are hurting, I can't imagine how our industry is doing.
We had to cancel our sectional because every month we would get, it'll be here in 2 months. It'll be here in 2 months. By month 7 or 8, we said, all right, we're good.
Yeah. We're done.
We'll get this by 2022. Yeah. I mean, the bottom line is the supply chain as a whole is getting hit. And I think individuals need to think about what is the impact of that, not only in our industry, but I think in other industries too. Thankfully, our food supply chain has been solid. It's been strong. You have a lot of good people that are working in there to keep the lights on, as they say. But you're building a new house. I think the latest estimate was you're paying between, depending where you live, $30,000 and $50,000 more just due to the cost of lumber alone. Yep. That's not sustainable.
Nope.
In any capacity.
No. There won't be very many bids getting awarded or projects getting awarded if that stays the same.
No. In the residential market, what we're seeing is, obviously the influx of people leaving the city, moving to more suburban areas, even tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So when you think of tier 1, you think of something like an LA or New York City or Boston. That's a tier 1. Those folks are definitely leaving for the suburbs, but they're also leaving for the tier 2s. Tier 2s not being quality of life, but just number of people and density. They're leaving for places like Nashville. They're leaving for places like Orlando. They're leaving for places like Frisco, Rockwall, Texas. And, at the residential level, we're seeing crazy delays in building new homes. And the only way it seems you're able to buy the home is, one, if you're bidding over market, but 2, the people who are selling that are leaving those cities, they're bringing massive down payments from equity in their old home. And that's the only way they're able to, I think, kind of afford these really rapidly rising prices in the residential market.
Yep.
So if the residential market is dealing with that, we know the commercial market is really struggling. What are you seeing in equipment rental prices, and how is that kind of impacting what you do?
That's an interesting question. So pricing, in my opinion, is moderated by the top 5 suppliers in the industry right now. The United Rentals, Sun State, Sunbelts of the world, they're really the ones that are dictating the pricing for the whole industry because they own so much of the market share. What
Sure.
I'm seeing is the actual delivery of this equipment from the manufacturers to the yards. So JLG, I think the last waiting period to get, even a small order of 6 scissor lifts was almost 9 months, right? So I can just imagine that larger boom lifts and some of those different things for some of these companies to get in their door is probably a year to almost 2 years out.
Wow.
The purchase price has gone up a little bit, but it hasn't gone up as much as you would see lumber or anything like that. I think
Mhm.
really it's only climbed by about 4 to 8% per unit. And then on some of the different items that require a lot more steel, like excavators, you're probably hovering right around 10 to 12. But these rental vendors are making anywhere between 30 to 50% margin. So they have a little bit of wiggle room to be able to still maintain a healthy margin and kind of
Mhm.
kick the can down the road until they can get back to normal operations.
Wow. And you're seeing that 4 to 8 or 10% that's passed on to the consumer.
Yeah, so
Then you-
so it's passed on to the point of purchase. So the vendors who actually get the equipment on their yard, they're paying a little bit more for the equipment. But if they price themselves out of the market because United Rentals has 800 scissor lifts in Dallas, then they're just not going to rent their equipment out, and their utilization is going to be low. So I haven't seen much of a price influx on the actual rental price points, but when it comes to the actual purchase price, I have seen that. Like, for example, none of our rates have changed in the last 2 years. We've had the same rates based on our spend, and I have the same chat with 10 different vendors a week of, hey, we'll give you better rates if you can commit $1 million to us this year. So they're all still utilizing the old dog and pony show to kind of sell equipment right now in the markets.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but given the situation, 4 to 8% doesn't seem too awful of an increase. That's impressive.
I mean, for smaller suppliers, no, but larger suppliers that are putting in 500 unit orders and stuff, that's probably a pretty penny that they're seeing go out the door.
Yeah. Compared to what we're seeing in some of the raw material increases, though,
Yeah,
that's still
yeah.
surprised it's not more. Um, you know, One thing we always look to is the future and seeing, how have things changed in the past, but what's going to change in the future. We've talked a little bit about technology, but what do you see changing not only for your industry, but for the construction industry as a whole moving forward?
So taking consideration of everything that happened with COVID, or just organically?
Let's do both. Let's talk about
Okay.
both.
So I think that a lot of different organizations have realized post COVID that they don't need a giant office with 500,000 square feet and need 500 employees in that office. They realize that they could probably get away with the same production without having to maintain such a big liability on their P&L. So I think a lot of these different construction companies are going to start utilizing a lot less space, not building high rises anymore for their headquarters, and actually not employ as many people to get out and spread word as much. They're going to rely a lot more on digital marketing and some of these different leads to drive business, because even though COVID's gone, there's still a lot of hesitancy. You're starting to see businesses that are kind of taking the role of president and making their own rules and saying that you can't come in unless you're wearing masks and stuff like that. So I think personally that you'll see a lot less, I wouldn't say workforce, but you'll see a lot more efficient use of manpower in the industry going forward after COVID. Organically, I see that happening regardless. You have companies like Beck that are testing AI and machine learning over in England right now. And when you think of AI and machine learning, you think of maybe like a little robot scanning around the ground. Nope, they have giant 40-yard articulated haulers that work in mines that are literally not controlled by any human. They have a certain path and they just roll to that path and they dump and they go and they keep getting filled up. So you're going to start seeing a lot more heavy equipment get AI implements, and you're going to see a lot more companies relying on data to actually make decisions. One of our vendors, Equipment Share, can't talk enough about how much we love them, but they have this technology where they're able to actually tap into the ignition system and create codes for each operator on their equipment. And that's your startup code, and that's everything. And then they can actually track if the operator is running the machine hot, or if the operator crashes into something, or if the operator blows it up because he was misusing it. And you're going to start seeing a lot more accountability on site, I think. With RFID chips and different things like this that are quite literally just little geo trackers that can be placed in a sticker, you're going to start seeing a lot more safety and a lot more OSHA standards being revitalized and probably increased, because there's technology out there right now that can let construction safety managers know if their superintendents and project managers are actually wearing their hard hats or their safety glasses or their vests. So, I would like to see a lot more accountability. I think we're heading in that direction, and we're going to see a lot more efficient uses of manpower.
Mm-hmm. Amazon has already gone the way of really implementing some of that technology. Last I heard, they have technology that can track the efficiency of a worker working on, machine line.
Yep.
And I'm interested to see how that plays out in construction. Safety is a big one too, because it often gets overlooked until it's too late.
Yep.
No one really, I'm generalizing, but it seems no one cares about safety until something really bad happens. And
Yep.
then it's an all hands on deck, but it's too little too late. So I'm curious to see how that get implemented. One thing I'd like to see as well is a bigger focus on safety. Because a lot of, what the safety officers are asking is it's not going to completely upend your routine or your day to put on a hard hat, your vest, your goggles, use, proper fall protection protocol. So I'd like to see more of a focus on that. And I would like to see more incentives and rewards to people for implementing that.
Yep.
Everyone loves to say, we have gone 365 days without a safety incident. Great. But how are you incentivizing and rewarding people to do that outside of just the safety crew themselves?
Yep.
I think safety is one of the biggest threats to P&L moving forward, especially as, we move to a more digitized and technologically advanced workforce.
And these companies like OSHA and these insurance companies, they're getting a lot smarter, and they have direct channels where they can understand exactly what happened. They can pull camera feeds, they can do all this stuff. So there's no, it's not like it was 20 to 30 years ago where you might be able to sweep something under the rug. It might still happen today, but it's less likely. And, our sentiment and our, promise as leaders to our team members is we want to see you go home to your family at the end of the day. Yes. And if it means wearing a hard hat so a screw that fell 500 feet above you doesn't go into your brain and kill you, then that's what you're going to have to do, because that's in the best interest of you, your family, and the organization.
Agreed. We're seeing a lot greater data usage, tracking, and I guess execution of data at those levels in organizations like OSHA. They're able to look at the data, make the right recommendations, and I'm curious to see what they use moving forward too. I know we're running short on time here. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm sure there's other things we want to talk about. So what topics do you want to get to that we haven't gotten to yet?
So, one thing that I kind of wanted to I don't want to take over your podcast here, but, one thing that I struggled with early in life, being a stronger individual as I am, is not coming forward when I have certain issues, right? For men, personal issues and your mentality and stuff, probably very hard for men to kind of get out and clear. Very rarely do you see men go to a counselor or anything like this. On the reverse side of things, when it comes to physical, sometimes even harder. I do this little thing that I do, when I go to a bar on a weekend and I see a group of 3 guys or something, and I say, hey, would you let me ask you a question if I purchase you each a drink? And you have to give me the most honest feedback that you can give me. And the question is when was the last time you had a physical? When was the last time you went to a doctor and had a physical? And you would be surprised to see how many people have not had a physical, men, if you will, in the last 4 to 5 years. an organization I'm part of right now is formankind.org. And our goal is to make sure that we create a channel that makes men like you and I a lot more comfortable about going and getting physicals and making sure they stay on top of their health. One thing that kills men on a yearly basis that shouldn't be killing men is prostate cancer, right?
Mhm.
Most of the time, if you catch prostate cancer early, chemo, treatment, everything downstream will be very easy for you to accomplish and nothing bad will come from it. But we still have people dying from it on a yearly basis because they're just not going and talking to a doctor. They're not voicing that they're in pain in certain situations. So formankind.org is an organization that not only provides monetary funds to families that have been affected by some of these different cancers that men are more prone to getting, but they also provide channels of counselors, different doctors, and things like that. So, you know, if the man does choose to go through this channel, it doesn't have to be aired out there like we're airing their dirty laundry or anything like that. So, you know, in our industry, especially, you know, kind of touching on the point that I said last time, making sure that we all get to go home and see our families and that we can create a legacy and that we're here for another 20 to 30 years at least to make sure our families are well taken care of. I implore everyone, you know, who's listening, if you haven't gotten a physical in the last year, just go get it. It's probably going to be free with your insurance and nothing bad is going to come from it. And the only thing you're doing is making sure that you're going to be around for, you know, the next 30 to 50 years.
That's
So
awesome.
I just wanted to plug For Mankind a little bit there. So
Yeah. You know, something as simple as a physical, I think, again, in our industry, the mentality behind a lot of folks, especially men, is I don't need to worry about it. I'm fine.
yep.
It's nothing. I'll tough it out. That's normal. All the stories we tell ourselves about what our body is trying to give us as warning signals get ignored. And on the mental health side of things, you know, I think the industry is really good at kind of pushing those thoughts away and, you know, just compartmentalizing and saying, oh, just, you know, man up, you'll be fine. But we're starting to see more emphasis on individuals taking care of their physical and mental health. And companies like formankind.org, that's an awesome mission. So I encourage people, especially men, go out, get a physical, talk to people, be honest with your healthcare providers, and, you know, be honest with the people in your life. If you're going through something and it's overwhelming, it's perfectly okay to seek help for that. There's nothing shameful. There's nothing demasculizing about that.
Yep.
That's a really
No,
good
I
point.
agree. Yeah, you know, it's even tough for me to this day, but you know, we'll grow stronger because of it. You know, getting emphasizing with our wives and our family members. I mean, that's how I've grown to the point I am today, is by getting feedback from people, adjusting my mindset and growing from it.
Tell our viewers where they can find you.
Yeah, so Pros Rent is live online, www.prosrent.com. User sign up is completely free. So if you want to check us out, you're more than welcome to check us out. You can find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is njpowell11. And I'm more than happy to connect with anyone. So feedback, if you have any recommendations, if you have any questions, if you want any coaching on, you know, hey, where did you come from? How did you do it? I'm more than happy to talk to anyone and provide counsel and provide support as best I can.
Okay. And that's Pros Rent, PROS rent.com, and LinkedIn, NJ Powell, November Juliet Powell with 2 L's, 1 1 on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. It was awesome.